In today's chess video, we're going to be looking at two games, one white, one black, where we play a Colle Zukertort against an early g6 chess opener, and as black, we play against an early pawn d5 advance against our beloved Philidor. Let's see how we fare in today's chess video. I know a couple of you guys have been asking me how to play against this, and so today we'll be taking a look at how to play against this against the 1682 rated player. We're going to play pawn c4 in this position. So whether or not our opponent plays d6 or d5, it's a little bit different. But again, this pawn c4 move is very, very important in the two variations where our opponent is going to play something a little bit unique, like pawn g6, or as you guys saw in the last two videos, bishop at g4 or bishop f5. And so the point of this opening that I'm going to be showing you guys is we're going to get a lot of center, we're going to get a lot of development extremely quickly against our opponent who's just going to spend a lot of time getting his bishop on g7, which doesn't actually do very much if you think about it. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop his bishop from doing much by letting him attack d4 while it doesn't do anything, and then I'm going to go for a big queenside attack. Now, this is a strange move, knight bd7. Perhaps I should have played something like queen b3 to take advantage of this, because my opponent never wants to play a move like pawn e6. Pawn e6 is a very weakening move. It's not really a very strong move by opponent. What queen b3 does is that, first of all, it threatens this pawn and forces our opponent to play a move like b6, bishop b7, and as you guys can see in this position, his pieces are very bad here. Now, this move is really, really bad as well, because, well, b6, the bishop on b7, they don't really do anything if you think about it. I could play queen b3, but I think in this position, I think it's fine to just castle. And this is the formation I really like to play against lower rated opponents because it's very strong and it's hard for your opponent to break out of. Now, here's a little bit of a tip. Oh, what? This is so strange. Why would he capture me if he played pawn c6? This doesn't really make a lot of sense, to be honest. Now, in this position, do I have bishop takes f7 check? Bishop takes f7 check looks very interesting because after king captures knight g5 check, he cannot play here because knight e6 is crushing. He can't play here because queen b3 is crushing, but he can't play king here because knight here should be crushing. So this looks a little bit strange, to be honest. So, you know what? Let's just go for it. Bishop takes f7 check. Our opponent will capture. We're going to play knight g5 check. Let's see where our opponent goes. Hopefully he doesn't go here. This is like the hardest one for me to take advantage of. Because the other two are just instant wins. Essentially, because I just have very simple queen b3 check if king here. And I have the very simple knight e6 if he plays king f8. Now he plays king f8, which is the easiest one for me to take advantage of. So I'll just capture him. I'll capture his queen and... well, I suppose the rest of this game should be very easy. I'm sorry that you guys weren't able to see really the formation that I was going to teach you guys, but you know, things like this happen against these lower rated opponents who don't see the issues with their light square or dark square weaknesses. Now in this position, I'll just capture here because his knight can't capture back, his pawn has to capture back, and now that's even more weaknesses for me to take advantage of. Let's play something like queen d3, let's play rook d1, let's get all my pieces into the game in this position, and it should be lights out extremely quickly. He plays king here, let's play knight over here, let's just try to play knight c7 check, maybe even try to go back to e6. Our opponent is going to be scrambling here because he's down so much material. Now I could win this pawn. To be honest, winning this pawn looks pretty good, but coming here to play there is also pretty good in this position. A lot of good moves here, though I am a greedy player. I'm just going to take that pawn there, and then I'm just going to bolt back. I'm going to play knight c7 again. As you guys can see, I'm just slowly dismantling this opponent here, and there really isn't much they could do. Now he lets this knight c7 check happen anyways here. Yeah, this opponent is self-destructing. We'll take the free bishop because free bishops are nice, and our opponent resigned. All right, pretty easy game to be honest. Let's do another one real quick. So today we got two games that we get to see. Our opponent plays pawn e4, and you guys know the drill. As white, we will play Colle Zukertort. As black, we will play the Philidor. So e4, d4, d6, knight f6. If he plays knight c3, we will play knight bd7. I know this like the back of my hand, and hopefully you guys know how to take advantage of these moves as well. Knight bd7, pawn e5, very simple stuff. Now, best move is bishop c4, but most bad players play moves like d5 or capture. But both of these moves make me extremely happy because, first of all, this one overextends, so it becomes a big weakness for me to attack, and capturing here allows this bishop to be free. So either of these moves will happen a lot under 2000 rated. I don't see bishop c4 very often unless it's another titled player. So after pawn c6 in this position, opponent plays bishop e7. We just play our normal setup where we just slowly develop our pieces, and our opponent will just be very sad with his pieces just looking at his pawns for some reason. These moves are terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So bishop e7, it's white to move. He plays that. Now, does this allow something like this? I think it does. Knight takes d5, then bishop takes, knight takes back, queen takes d7, d6. Doesn't look too great for me, so I don't think I will do it. But what if I just capture here first? Capture here first. What if he does an in-between move? That's fine. We could try to go for this cheapo here. And to be honest, let's just go for it. Let's play pawn takes. If his knight takes, we're going to be winning. If bishop takes, we're going to be winning. Actually, if bishop takes, knight takes, knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, knight c7 check at the end of that looks pretty decent for our opponent here. So let's capture there first. If our opponent's smart, he might just take here. Now if he's dumb, he's going to take this way, because I'm pretty sure this just allows this. And I suppose after queen captures, he's trying to mate me on f7, which I suppose is the idea, which I didn't really see, but that it's not really too much of a problem for me. Queen takes, we just castle here. He's going to take on e7, and I have a move like knight b6 in the future. And my opponent's position is going to be a little bit suspicious here, due to the fact that his bishop, his queen are all lined up in the same direction. He might castle queenside, allowing me to play knight to b6, but in those positions I'm extremely comfortable due to the fact that I have an open c-file to attack his king, as well as the fact that, well, I'm going to get his very important bishop, and the worst bishop in the Philidor defense is completely gone. So not too much of a problem here. I think I'm very happy in this position. Well, not extremely happy, but I'm content here. So let's just play the knight b6 move I was mentioning earlier. He plays something like that. Need to make sure there's no tactics like f5. I don't think so. I'm just going to capture there and then play bishop e6. As you guys can see, my bishop's extremely happy, very strong. I'm also going to get an open c-file to take advantage of my opponent's pieces extremely, extremely soon. And perhaps you guys will be able to see how I take advantage of something like a minority attack in these positions. So rook c8, I'm going to double up over here. I'm going to play moves like a6, b5, b4. Now, of course, if my opponent's silly, he'll allow me to play... Okay, he'll allow me to play bishop c4, skewer his queen to his rook, and then I'll just win the rook in this position. But this wasn't really the plan in this position. I was planning to play a6, b5, moves like that to take advantage of the opponent's well, weaknesses. Now in this position, if I play here, he might have b4, but I have rook c3. So I think I'm gonna play rook here. I'm just gonna stop him stop him from moving his queen over here. I'm gonna double up. I have the rooks, which means if I double up in this position, he won't really have two rooks to take advantage of it because he's down a rook, which pretty simple. And in this position, he plays b4. If I move back here, he'll play like pawn c4. So I'm gonna stop him. I'm gonna play rook to c3. And then I'm going to just double up over here on this c-file, and now this c2 pawn is what we call a backwards pawn. Extremely weak, not something you want to have in your own chess games, but my opponent just saw b4, c4, but that's not something I'm going to let him have, obviously. So, rook to c3 in this position, our opponent plays pawn a4, we're going to play rook c8, attack that c2 pawn. Let's see what our opponent's going to do about that. Probably not much, maybe cry. He might play queen e2. But then I can play something like queen c7, and this is Alekhine's gun. A very famous type of maneuver where you just get a rook, queen, rook, or I think in the Alekhine's gun it was originally a rook, rook, queen. And in this position, as you guys can see, now we just show you the power of the rook. So I'm going to offer a trade here. He kind of has to accept. And then after he accepts, I'm going to take all his pawns. And after I take all his pawns, that would be enough for me to win the game, essentially. Now, the one thing I do need to be worried about is some back rank checkmates. But I'm not going to fall for a back rank checkmate, obviously. I'm not that dumb. Or maybe I am. But in this position, queen c4, very simple. I'm going to eat b4, I'm going to eat a4, I'm going to eat e4, I'm going to eat everything in this position, and there's not much our opponent can do to stop it. So let's see what our opponent does here. He's thinking, he's thinking, he's thinking, but no amount of thinking is going to save him here. So Queen c4, our opponent's thinking hard. And after this game, we will be back at 1700. We will be 1702. And so queen c4 in this position, again, it's our opponent's move. He's thinking very hard in this position. And, well, he might be stalling. So let me know in the comments below, by the way, if you guys enjoyed today's video, if you'd rather see a lot more games in one video than the one game per video that we've been doing so far. Let me know in the comments section below. And of course, if you've been enjoying this video, please leave a like, subscribe, put that notification bell on, and maybe I'll see you guys and I'll teach you guys some more stuff in the future. But before we even do that, we need to finish this game off. And converting is a very important skill that a lot of people need to learn and get good at. And so hopefully you guys can learn how I convert when I'm up in exchange, like in this position over here. So my opponent's smart. He plays queen d1. He doesn't want to trade, because when you trade when you're down, you're just going to lose. But the issue with this move is it just lets me take here. But the question is, can he play rook b1? Then I take here. To be honest, I give him a lot of compensation there, but I don't think that's really that much of a problem. I'm going to take here, defending d6. And then if he plays rook b1, I'm going to take here. And then this move defends b7. Now in this position, do I have something better? Do I have something like rook, a queen here? And while queen there is probably winning as well, I think I'm just going to be greedy. I'm just going to take all these pawns over here. He's going to take on d6, and then I'm going to play something like pawn h6, because when you're playing in these positions, the most important thing for you guys to do is make sure you don't lose. And in this position, I think the only way I can possibly lose, other than, I disconnect, is, getting back rank mated. So if I play h6, all the back rank mate threats are all gone. I'm not really worried about anything anymore. So our opponent plays something like this, which is fine. We might play something like rook c7, rook takes, queen takes. Something like this was a little bit interesting to me, but I don't think it quite works there. So how do we break through here is the question. I could play something like rook c6, then rook c7, just play a little bit passively. Yeah, force his queen to go to a bad square. That's something that I want his queen to go to. And after he plays queen d7, I'm just going to play rook c7. And we're going to have a nice position here. We're going to have everything defended. We're going to be up 3 points, which is the exchange in the pawn. Opponent's knight is complete garbage, and we still have weaknesses that we can attack. Again, we're just going to slowly build up here. We're not really going to rush anything, because there's no need to rush in these type of positions. Our opponent offers a queen trade, and I will happily oblige there. Why wouldn't I? I'm going to defend my pawn with my least active rook, and I'm going to just defend all my pieces, and then I'm just going to win the game. Like, what is my opponent doing? He might play something like knight a3, but then I'll just take a c2 pawn, because back rank threat is happening to him. So our opponent needs to be careful. But now that my rooks are active, the next thing that I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get my king active, because the king is extremely important in the endgame. A lot of you guys neglect your king coming out. So we're going to bring our king out, and we're going to eat all his pawns, and then we will essentially win the game. Pretty simple, to be honest. King f7, king e6, king d5. Slowly move our pieces up, and we shall win. King here, king here, king here. Boop, boop, boop. Bop, bop. Alright. Another question I have for you guys, let me know, is do you guys like the reviews that I do at the end of the games? I think sometimes I'm just reiterating a lot of the same things that I've been saying throughout the game, so I don't think they're too useful. So I'm not going to do the review session today. Instead, I'm going to jam pack more games like today, where we have 2 games instead of just 1. And then we're going to see how these videos perform and see if you guys enjoyed this one a little bit better. All right, so let's just play king here. I'm just going to stuff my king on a6. I'm just going to try to win this a5 pawn, because one thing the knight is really bad at is moving far away. And as you guys can see, this knight is stuck here. He can never move, because otherwise I'll just win this pawn, which is not good for my opponent. So we're going to get our king to come over here. Now, whenever our opponent has a knight, you got to be careful that you don't get forked, because that would not be great. And I've been forked quite a bit, so I do need to be careful in my own games. But now that my king is here, this is pretty good. I'm going to take this pawn in the future after I set up my rooks to attack. And then, well, I'm going to promote my a pawn. Here's another valuable tip. In the endgame, when you are just on material, always look for your win condition. In this position, my win condition is my past A pawns. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these pawns to help me win the game. These are the pawns that I'm going to try to push. And I'm going to really ignore the rest of the pawns because they're not that important in this position. I do not care about the rest of my pawns. As long as they're holding back my opponent's pawns, I will use the pawn that I think will be the one that will win me the game. And I will be using that pawn exclusively to push. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So I could check him over there, to be honest, and it looks pretty good. But I think I'm just going to move this pawn up. If he plays knight d3, I'm just going to play rook over here. Again, my pawn's not really doing anything, and I'm just going to continue making threats against him, as you guys can see in this position. He can give me a check if he wants, but I'm just going to move my king back to a6 and make sure there's no threat mating nets. Nope, 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 no mates. And my opponent has to move back here unless he wants to lose his c2 pawn. Or I guess he can move his king back, but that's not very great either. So he moves his king back. We're going to move our pawn up. If he checks me, I'm just going to move up. No harm, no foul. We're just going to move up, and slowly this pawn is going to make it to the end, and there really isn't much my opponent can do about it. So a6, king a5. Pretty nice position for us. King a5 is coming in, pawn a3, oh, king a5. We're going to defend our pawn in a4. And now that his pieces are stuck on this side of the board, there's also another strategy that you guys can employ. It's called the principle of two weaknesses. It's when your opponent's pieces are stuck on one side, all you have to do is bring your opponent or all your pieces to the other side of the board, and essentially that should be enough to get a victory. Now our opponent plays here. We're just going to give him a little check over here. We're going to try to force him off this pawn. He might move his knight back. Then we play something like pawn f5 or something. I just want to slowly bring my pieces out. I do not want to rush anything, because the more you rush, the more opportunities you give your opponent to win the game. So I'm just going to slowly move up. I'm not going to let my opponent really do anything in these positions. I'm going to push pawn up. I'm going to play pawn here. Again, no rush here. I'm not rushing. I'm just slowly moving my pawns up. And we're going to use that to help me win the game. Okay, no checks, no forks, no nothing annoying. So we're going to do something like this. Force his king to go away. I mean, his knight to go away. I have to be worried about this fork, but nothing really else. So I'm just going to move my rook over here. And maybe we'll swing our rook this way. Just need to be careful of any forks, which I do not see any. So I'm just going to move my rook here, stopping his king from coming up, stopping his king from coming this way. And his knight doesn't really have any good squares to go to either. Slowly moving our pieces up. Our king's going to come up, our pawn's going to come up here next, and we're going to move. Oh, and my opponent gives a free rook. But the idea of this free rook is it's kind of sneaky. If I take, he'll play knight here, and then I move my king, and then he'll take my rook. But to be honest, that's pretty good for me. So I think I'm just do that. I don't really care about him taking that rook over there, because the idea here is that my pawn on the a file is going to be impossible for a knight to stop. The knight is really bad at stopping these outside passers because, well, they have to go to this corner of the board, and going to the corner of the board with a knight is not a good idea. So I just need to make sure there's no forks, but I know that if your knight is a diagonal away from the king, that's very easy for us to win, and our opponent essentially resigned. And so there you have it. 2 easy games, 1 easy Colle Zukertort game, 1 easy Philidor game. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone.